Hello and welcome to today's edition of Owlbear Soup. I'm Justin.
And I'm Rich. Oh, soup's on. I want more soup puns immediately.
I feel like the soup was simmering even before we came live. Like there is questions in the chat already.
True. A lot of soup-based questions, which is really good.
Yeah. So, how many owlbears does it take to make soup? Make a soup. I guess one really good owlbear, I suppose, with a big spoon.
Could be. Yeah,
and a fancy hat, maybe a curly mustache.
Does that owlbear own a restaurant? Like, is there a larger staff back there in the kitchen helping make this soup, or is it just like one very trained owlbear?
I think at this point it's not even a trained owlbear, right? The owlbear is like following its passion. It's sick of being a slave to its mage masters, and has escaped the hovel that it has lived in, and it is now rending onions and and other fine vegetables to put in its soups, as opposed to adventurers.
I really assumed that this owlbear had a kitchen knife, but they're just rending.
No. It has claws. It might as well use them.
That is amazing. I miss rend. That was one of my favorite abilities. So if it can come back in a cooking show, I'm good.
I think I was telling Teos, rend can come back anytime. All you have to do is put it in there.
That's
5e
true.
is flexible.
That is true. It feels so mean in 5th ed. I think in 3rd ed you could mitigate it a little bit. It was more hit point bloat or something, but 5th ed, I feel like if I'm dropping that much damage on a character, they're done.
I mean, maybe that character deserved to be done.
Could be. What if it was like T-Rex style? So it was like 1d6, but then the rend is like 50 damage.
Oh man. All right. So rebuilding the owlbear.
Okay.
I do want to kind of touch on something that I didn't touch on last week real quick before we get to something very important that I want Rich to talk about. And that's specifically that looking in the chat, there's this chap AlphaStream1. He's that's Teos. He's doing a really cool stream. If you get a chance to check it out, he is driving his character around what is it, Neverwinter Nights, the RPG, and he's telling history of the Forgotten Realms, as well as talking about like how he could do some of the stuff in games and some of the inspiration he's got. And Neverwinter MMO, thanks. And it's really fun to watch. I've had it on in the background when I'm doing research on other things, or I recently did an SEO audit for a website, and so I had that on in the background, and it was pretty fascinating. It's a fun way to look at the game and use the game as a platform to grow your home games, grow the stories you're telling, and really kind of understand like just history, lore of Forgotten Realms, which is what we talked about last week. There's just so much lore there, and it's nice to have these little ways of kind of expanding upon it. So anyway, it's also on YouTube. I will link to the YouTube channel and the Twitch channel when I post this on YouTube later.
That's just so cool. I mean, that's a really unique thing to do. I think that's hard. It's hard to do, I think, a lore video podcast without, some sort of focus. So I love that it's a journey, like kind of wandering around and just seeing these things. So that is fantastic. I need to turn that into my, that's good. I like that you're doing that as background as well, because you can just let it like seep into you and just absorb all this lore. That's fantastic.
Yeah, I think the last one I caught, he was talking about barbarians and stealing ships. And I'm like, yes, I want more of that.
That's perfect. Wow. Gosh, I want to steal. Yeah, that's good. I like this idea. I'm going to write an adventure about this. Stealing ships.
Yeah, Jonathan, totally go check it out. It's absolutely worth it. I'm talking to Jonathan in the chat, not you, Rich.
Oh, I know.
Speaking of talking to you, before we got started, you brought up something And now I need to. We brought it up last week. I didn't get a chance to watch it, but you finally watched it.
Yes.
Onward.
Oh my gosh.
This is a nerdy D&D movie, from what I've heard.
It is. So when I saw this movie advertised for the first time, I was like, okay, it's a Pixar movie, and it's people are blue, and it's like a family thing, and nah, I just was not interested. Like when we were watching it last night, I was reminded that when I saw the trailer for the first time, I was not excited about watching this in any way. But since then, someone said that is a good movie about D&D, and I was like, okay, well, now I'm interested because I want more movies about D&D, you know. And when I think about that, what does a D&D movie need? I mean, it needs recognizable classes, maybe. It needs magic. It needs a fantasy setting. It needs a quest. It needs an enemy. I don't know. It needs exploration, right?
Needs the bonds of friendship.
The bonds of friendship and family. Onward has every single one of those. Every single one. And it is so good about it.
Yeah, but does it have a panel van with a wizard on the side?
It has a panel van with a wizard riding a unicorn.
That's like the only thing I remember from the previews.
It's so good. So that van is just really cool. Like your quest vehicle as they're traveling around. Like it's so okay. Do you know much about Onward?
Nope,
Yeah, I guess
not at all.
Saw this. Okay. So the idea is that it's a fantasy world where at some point, magic is super cool, but it's hard to use. And someone invents electricity. And they go like, oh, okay, well, this is easier. And they even do like a little moment early on where someone is training to be a wizard and can't make the spell work, but then flips a light switch on and off and is like, light, great. And so the entire world transitions into our world, basically, but they are fantasy creatures. So like there's a manicore that basically runs like a, not quite a Dave and Buster's, but still like this fantasy themed cheesy restaurant, maybe more like a Chuck E. Cheese. Everyone's on TV. The main characters are in high school, right? And they're going to a recognizable high school. Yeah. But the main characters are both elves. There are pixies. There are trolls. There are tons of other fantasy, creatures involved in the story and in the setting. They're just in our world, basically. There's no humans or anything. The two main characters are Tom Holland, playing our, new coming wizard, and he's perfect for the role because Tom Holland, I mean, is always playing this like kind of wounded character, like just his personality is kind of makes you want to go like, oh, I'm sorry that happened to you. Right?
Yeah.
It's so like Spider-Man, but not funny. Like there's not much humor out of his character. There's a little bit. The humor comes from his older brother, who is played by Chris Pratt. And Chris Pratt, beyond being like, this older like metal van driving, he wears like a denim vest with patches all over it, right? Pretty metal, pretty punk. And he plays a game called Legends of Yore, which is just D&D. It's just D&D.
Nice.
Except that it is historically accurate. It is based on the world as it was before they invented electricity. So all the spells in there are the real spells.
So they're just playing a historical war game.
But it's really funny because as they go through, the biggest thing is they realize that, little brother has magical power and has this staff. And it's constantly older brother being like, well, I know the spell that you could use here. It's in the book. You just got to say these words and, you got to believe, or you got to not lie, or, there's all these qualifiers around the spells, but they're casting spells and they are improving as they go through. Like they're leveling up basically, or at least he is. So
I love the idea of the setting that it's like, yeah, no, there's totally magic and everything. It's just hard, and electricity is easy.
Right?
Like I could concentrate real hard and I could make a light glow in my hand, or I can just flip this flashlight on and off, right?
Exactly. Right. If you can fix your problems with electricity and technology instead of magic, and it's easier, then why more reliable even, why of course magic's gone. That's it. And I really like it. And the whole quest is based around their dad. This is in the trailer. Their dad passes away early on, but they discover a spell, which is how they get the staff in the first place. And the spell is like, this spell will allow me to come back for one day. I wrote it specifically so that when you grow up, I can meet you and see how you've done and stuff like that, which is, it's a Pixar movie. It's got feelings. But they cast the spell wrong. And so nice. as he starts developing and like filling out, he only gets up to his waist, and so there's just these legs running around. So it's also a Weekend at Bernie's movie.
Oh, nice.
They're like they put like a fake torso and they're dragging this not person around. It's incredible. It's really, really good.
Yeah, and Teos is mentioning that it's also a great movie for touching on relationships between brothers.
Yeah,
that sounds great.
Right, in a single parent family, absolutely. Like there were some feelings, there were some personal emotions going on while I was watching that movie. It was very cool.
So have you ever seen the anime? I watch a fair amount of anime. Have you ever seen the anime Hunter x Hunter?
No.
So in that anime, the characters want to be hunters, and hunters are allowed to do things other people aren't, and they're kind of like the superheroes-esque of the realms, right? Mm-hmm. One of the interesting things is that a similar thing in that the main character, his dad disappears to go be a hunter, and there is a clue to how to find him hidden within the cartridge of a video game. So like they're going through all these quests to get this cartridge, to get the clue, to try to, and it's, anyway, it just kind of rung similar to me, that little aspect of it. And I was like, I like that idea. Mm-hmm. Where it's, I tend to dislike the stories that are focused on the one, like this is the person who was destined to do X, right? Which is why I personally, I'm not a huge Wheel of Time fan, right?
I'm with you. All right. I hear that.
Read the first 2.5 books, and I was like, it's not for me. I appreciate it, but it's not for me.
It's like, this person isn't that great. So yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I like the idea where the quest that the person goes on is not because of destiny, but it's because of something else, right? Like, I don't mind it being the one, the person, the conqueror, not the conqueror, but the big hero being the solitary focus, so long as it's like, yeah, you know what? I have this spell to bring back my dad, or I have this video game, and somehow that's going to lead me to my dad, or something along those lines. So there's something involved in the character, as opposed to, I woke up and I was born into this destiny and I have no choice but to face the big bad guy, right? I am Harry Potter, right? No, so those kind of stories don't appeal to me as much, and I think that's because my exposure to fantasy came from Dungeons and Dragons and not from novels, right? I only read sci-fi before I got into D&D. I didn't read any fantasy novels. I was just like, Hobbit, no. Why would I read that when I could read A Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, right?
Okay.
So
I was the one reading the Silmarillion, so
that's okay.
I'm a nerd. I'm not kind of nerd.
But anyway, Onward sounds amazing.
What was that?
Onward sounds amazing.
It is. It's very, very good. You were talking, and I thought about the old D&D movies, like the one with. There was a Wayans. I can't remember, but the two thieves.
Yep.
And they're not destined to save things. They're just kind of stuck on this path. Mm-hmm. And that movie's fine. Jeremy Irons is fantastic. That is a role, and everyone should remember it. Yeah. But the thing I liked about Onward versus that kind of storytelling is, just like you were saying, the quest is personal. It's small. It's understandable. There they go. They're not searching for a rod of 7 parts. They don't have to come up with this huge epic story so that you're like, oh, this will end the world, and I understand how that works, and I believe all these things. It was just like Pixar just made it so personal that, of course, like, it mentioned in the chat, I feel it. Like, I know exactly what this quest is like, and I'd be like, yeah, I'd be on that quest too, right? Yeah. And so I love that they were able to make that part like instant buy-in. Rather than, the D&D movies have to immerse you in the world. They have to immerse you in these ideas and this quest and this huge overarching villain, and then you have to buy into it. So they got a clever trick here, and I liked it a lot.
Yeah. Oh man. Jonathan just said his friends and him went to go see, I believe, the Dungeons and Dragons movie in Times Square, and no one else was in the theater.
That sounds about right. It's funny because I would love for there to be another D&D movie. I mean, they're fun. They are fun. I will say that. Sure.
And I mean, you know, the Dungeons and Dragons movie with the Wayans brother was a thing.
Mm-hmm.
I actually like the cheesy sci-fi made for Sci-Fi Channel Dungeons and Dragons movies as well, and they were bad, like, but good, but bad.
But bad. Oh my gosh, that's funny.
Yeah,
It was a thing. So like,
yeah.
Does there need to be another does there need to be another Dungeons and Dragons movie that has this huge epic, story, or does D&D exist like in a, what do I want to say, like a cultural zeitgeist that a movie like Onward is enough? Like it uses D&D as a framework for this story, but it's not a D&D story, but it is at the same time.
Yeah.
Are we ready for that? Is that going to be okay?
For me, I don't think there should be specifically a Dungeons and Dragons movie or cartoon or any of that. I think as a zeitgeist, it's appropriate. I do like the idea of settings, right? Like, I love the idea of maybe getting Forgotten Realms the anime treatment and getting Greyhawk, maybe that's where the kids show is, right? Or even make it really weird, like give Dark Sun a cartoon and make that the kids show, right? Because we've already seen that, right, with Adventure Time. You can make a post-apocalyptic world an interesting place to put a children's show.
Yeah.
I think for me, that's what I would want more from any kind of consumable media in that format, right? I don't want the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon, the setting agnostic dungeon master one where they all ride the wrong ride and end up in another realm. So,
although I do remember, that was a big thing growing up for sure. Yeah. But yeah, I like the idea like that. What if there was a Candlekeep mystery? Like, give me Sherlock Holmes in the Forgotten Realms and just tell that story.
Yeah.
It could. I don't need to save the world. Yeah,
right? Yeah,
absolutely.
Starring Benedict Cumberbatch.
Oh, that would be good.
Both Critical Role and The Adventure Zone are getting animated series. Thanks for that, Laser.
Yeah. I wonder how big. I wonder how epic those are going to be.
Yeah. Well, I think the Critical Role one did exceedingly well on Kickstarter. I followed that one. I haven't followed much about The Adventure Zone.
Sorry, I was thinking story-wise. Are these world-shaking events, or are they like these smaller personal stories that? Kind of like.
Yeah, I like the smaller personal stories. I think it's fun to get to know characters, right? I'm going through Final Fantasy VII, and it's not so much. Although I'm getting a lot more out of the story this time around, and it's very interesting in the fact that it's like the characters are who I'm connected with. It's like I'm watching Cloud grow and all of that stuff, and it's in all these other characters that are coming in. I'm watching them grow and change. And what's going to suck whenever I finish this is that I won't have those characters in the same way anymore. And so, yeah, I'm totally into the character side of things.
Absolutely. I was just thinking, like, I spent so much more time playing Final Fantasy X than 7. And so I'm like, well, when are you going to meet Wakka? Because Wakka is such a fun character and has this cool arc. And, you get to play Blitzball. And I'm immediately like, what was the plot of that game again? But no, it's about the characters and watching those interactions happen for sure. For sure. Oh my gosh. Give me Colin Firth in addition to Benedict Cumberbatch. I would watch that show for sure. We just got to convince them to be D&Ders. lightly D&D.
Colin Firth as Elminster.
That would be wild. But, like if it was something where they were new characters and, Elminster shows up for a moment, that we get those moments like we do in, gosh, like in a TV show where they are just giving you hints of fan service, like in the Legends of Tomorrow or The Flash, right? Every once in a while they're going to give you a character and you're like, I know that character, I read those books, I know that's cool, and then they're gone, right? They're just there for the moment. It doesn't need to be built around this epic Elminster story. It can just have Elminster show up for a day or two.
Absolutely. I don't want an Elminster story. I want him to be in the periphery.
Yeah.
The Titans show on DC does a really good job of that, where they, you keep referencing Batman and you keep referencing Bruce Wayne, and it isn't until like the most recent season you actually meet Bruce Wayne. Oh, he's not gonna be Batman. He's there for like an episode or two, just to kind of like be the, almost be the sage, right, in their hero's journey. He just comes in and drops a little knowledge and then disappears, right? And then they're all back on their own. So it's a good show.
That's cool. That's very cool. Oh, wow. Anyway, I think that's my rundown on Onward.
All right.
I'm trying to think if I have any other notes on it, but it was good. It was good. There should be more D&D style stuff. I think it's a great framework for stories, and I think the story, like, it's so, we just know it now. Like, D&D is so, I don't know. It's just an idea that people get, and it's so close to the video games that we're making. Like, you can make stories like that all the time. I hope they continue.
Yeah, you were also saying you checked out something recently from all the free stuff over at Wizards that they're giving away for D&D nerds.
You were telling me about some of these, and I went to go look, and I found Adventure with Muck, which is the activity book.
Mm-hmm.
So this is fantastic. Like, I wanted to check this out and see exactly what it was. I thought this was an adventure, and it was an adventure like focused for kids, but it's this activity book in support of Extra Life, and it is wonderful. It's like you immediately get into it, and it's just pictures to color. The first page is like, hello, I'm Muck the bravest goblin. I've got super big ears for good hearing. Who needs boots? I like to sneak. My nose is like a kitty, a fierce kitty. And so, it's immediately like a coloring page. And so many of these pages are, the next page is all blank and it says your name, like draw you as an adventurer, right?
Oh, wow.
Let me introduce you to my best friend and companion, Bird Squirrel. Part bird, part squirrel, all awesome.
Wait, is that actually in the book, or was that your character?
No, that's right here. That's the next page. That is Muck's best friend. Bird Squirrel was made with magic by a nutty wizard. Again, these are all coloring pages, so you could color every single one of them. The next one is like, look, here's stuff
nutty
you could do.
Wizard.
If you like Bird Squirrel, how about owl plus bear equals Owlbear, or spider plus frog equals Spider Frog, or rhino plus shark equals Rhino Shark, which I have not seen in D&D yet.
Boule.
Yeah. But it says, like, draw your own, make your own combo, right? That's page 4 in here. It's just, start doing weird stuff. Here's a beholder. Here's a grick. Here's a gray slod. Color these. These are crazy monsters. How to draw a flump. How to draw a goblin. How to draw a grung.
I mean, with a flump, don't you just like wad up some tissue and throw it at a piece of paper and say you're good?
Basically, right? Yeah. But this is, here's how you draw it. You make like a little oblong, a little mouth right here, eyeballs on stalks, and like little tendrils, and that's it.
Nice.
And it's great, right? There you get your cartoon flump. It's great. A grung is also pretty fantastic. Like these, I could do these because they're basically stick figure-esque, and that's what I'm up for. There's like shield designs you can do in here. There's draw your own map. There's all sorts of stuff, and eventually it gets into Muck's friends, these other goblins that you could go on an adventure with.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a little section like actually playing adventures with these characters. Here's some other NPCs you could throw in there. Here's some ideas for it. We're done. And that's the entire book.
Nice. Tails points out, if you liked Muck, he recommends the All Goblin Adventure by GM Tem, So You Want to Be a Goblin.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna have to check that out. Because this is just like, it's such a cool idea for kids for sure. But at the same time, the creative ideas in here are all great. Like, I wanted to go through it. I might print it out. Because I could do some drawing. I could figure these things out. Why not? It's just neat. Like, it's fun, especially like I want to spend an hour doing some really relaxing D&D style activity drawing.
Well, I mean, in this current climate, that's definitely the kind of stuff that's really helping people through this is things like Muck, right? You know, something to kind of take your mind off of everything, let you relax, clear your thoughts before you go back to facing, you know, your same four walls you've been facing for the past 30 days.
Right. Oh gosh. Whew. So I've had some thoughts about what to do with this book, but I really want to explore it just because it's fun, and I miss these kind of activity books. I remember doing quite a few of them. I see Jonathan also did a few of these, which is fantastic. Activity books are fun and worth it. So I was surprised. I really was. I thought this was going to be a kids-based adventure, just drawn in kind of a kids format, because that's the kind of thing I expected. So it was a huge surprise to me to see it was all activities all the way through.
That's so good. Yeah, they're releasing a variety of stuff. I haven't checked it since last Friday, I think. But yeah, they're releasing quite the variety of different things and it's not just all adventures. It's exactly like you said. There was the coloring book, you know, the activity book, that type of stuff. You know, I really like that all these different companies are putting out free ways or inexpensive ways to experience their games and kind of, you know, allow you to try these things while you're at home with nothing else to do. And, you know, it's good. One, it's good for the community. Two, it's great marketing because, you know, if you get someone like hooked into D&D because of this activity book, well, of course they're going to be buying books down the road, right?
Yeah.
You know, and like kind of the same thing like Fantasy Flight is doing with Keyforge, right? They're pushing Keyforge. And one of the things you can do is they have some print and play Keyforge decks. So the interesting thing about Keyforge is when you buy a deck, that is your deck, and every deck is different. Right. So of course, not every one of these downloadable decks will be, you know, if you and I decided to download the same deck, it'll be the same deck, right?
Gotcha. Okay.
But you can play this game that's supposed to be really interesting at home by just printing these cards and giving a play, and then, you know, hopefully, you know, over these next few weeks, months, you really get into the game, and then you start buying things from Fantasy Flight because they gave you this opportunity to test their product before you were able to, you know, dive into it. And it was all under the guise of a service to, you know, make your time at home more enjoyable, which I don't think is a bad thing. Like I'm saying it like, you know, I think it's a combination of good things. It shows goodwill, and by showing goodwill, you will get goodwill back. And companies that are doing things like that, I think it's great. So.
I totally agree. Absolutely. One of these that I have found, and I don't think this is a specifically online experience already, but it is. I'm very happy that it is happening right now because it's giving me something very exciting to look forward to. Is the Paizo team, along with Roll for Combat, are relaunching the RPG Superstar competition for 2020. I'm so excited about this. This has been gone for 4 years now. I think 2016 was the last one. And this is one of the first places where I was doing some design work because I just, for some reason, didn't realize that you just could if you wanted to. And so the RPG Superstar used to be this Pathfinder competition, and it's a very tiered structure. Like you would apply by designing a magic item, following their format as closely as possible, submitting it, and then everything would move into this open public voting where you would see 2 items at a time and you would vote for the one you like the best. And you would do that for, I don't know, like 2 weeks. And then the judges would look at the top like 40 or 50 and then create a top 32. Oh. And those competitors would move forward to the next stage, which was designing a monster. And then again, going through this public voting, and then I think that was just up to judging at that point, actually. I'm not sure if the public voted on them anymore. But it was really cool because like the last year they did it, there were over 500 people on it. It launched the careers of tons of Paizo freelancers that are still working on Pathfinder products. I remember one year I was with Robert Brooks, who just got hired on as a narrative designer for Destiny, and I'm jealous. No. He's fantastic. He's a good guy. But it was just so cool to be part of this huge freelance community that spawned because of this. Like we all kind of met on these boards, and there were quite a few products that came out of it. So very cool. Like the winners would eventually get to the highest winner got to write a module for them, like a whole like a module in Pathfinder terms is like an entire level.
Mm-hmm.
So you could write a 4th level module, you'd be 5th at the end of it. And then that one had also like every item from the top 32 would be posted in there. And it, might use the monsters that were designed. It might use the encounters that were designed. The final level was design your own module, and then that, or pitch a module, and then that pitch was the winner. But it was a very cool competition. It had a bunch of great hosts. Owen Casey Stevens is hosting again, and I think he was the lead judge, or the host, or whatever, back in the day as well.
It was asked in the chat, do you know why they stopped doing it for a little while, or do you have any clue on your end? You're more Paizo connected than I am.
Gosh, I love this competition. I cannot even imagine how hard it was to run. I think early on, it didn't have as many applicants, and so it was easy for the judges in the opening rounds to really look at things and be like, I like this item. And then later on, it was just impossible. Like there were so many items that I think it potentially ran away with them. I don't know for sure. That's my expectation, is that it just took too much work to do, and they weren't getting anything. They didn't have any money or sponsorship. This one is sponsored by Roll for Combat, which I think is helping. They're presenting it at the very least. So I'm not sure exactly why it has decided to come back, except maybe that people have just decided to do it. But I bet the judges were just like, that. I mean, the competition lasted for 3 months.
Oh, wow.
Think. I mean, it was like, announce the next winner, and then, okay, so you got to design a monster. Well, that'll take you 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. And then at the end of that, you have to submit. And then at the end of that, we're going to look through them and judge, and that'll be another 2 weeks,
Yeah.
It was an extended process.
Yeah. They're also doing the, man.
We've been talking a while.
Yeah, we've been talking a while, and I haven't been drinking enough water.
Yeah.
I've been drinking caffeinated beverages, so I'm going to move over to water. They're also doing the Make Your Own Pantheon competition as well at the same time. So, but this is a Pathfinder Society contest hosted by the No Direction Network.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, the idea behind this one is that, essentially the let's see here. So the idea is that your Pantheon has always been I keep wanting to say Starfinder Society because I played Starfinder, not Pathfinder. Has always been in Pathfinder, and has always had worshippers, but it's just not one of the more popular ones. And maybe it intersects with some of the other pantheons in a certain way, or whatever. So you come up with your Pantheon and you do the full write-up for it, and then you submit it, and then it's going to become a legal for Pathfinder Society play Pantheon, which I think is kind of interesting and fun.
Oh, wow. So that's just like a one and done. You were going to design this. They're all going to get put in. It's going to pick the winner.
Yep.
Very cool. That's amazing.
And they have a panel of judges, of folks who some of the names I recognize, mm-hmm. A couple of them I don't. Let's see here. Dustin Knight, Alex Agunas. He's the Everyman Gamer. Owen Casey Stevens, we've mentioned him. Ryan Castello, nice. Costello, Jefferson J. Thacker, Vanessa Hoskins, and John Godick.
Okay, that's cool. That's amazing. I like that because it's going to have just one big winner, so it's going to be a big push. I mean, those have to be solid right from the get-go. Mm-hmm. RPG Superstar, they're saying that this time, rather than one winner, there's going to be over 100 winners. The prizes are totally different than they have been before. Major prizes are going to be worth quite a bit of money, but I think the grand prize is 500 in prize money, whatever that means. Nice. I haven't looked it up. I had it. But basically, by winning these prizes, you're going to get the opportunity to have your stuff featured in products.
Oh, wow. Which
is, I think, a very cool way to, to go through and have prizes. Let me see real quick. For Copper, your monster featured as a Copper Prize winner with your name as the author in the upcoming Roll for Combat Battle Zoo Bestiary. So they will be putting these out in the future. T-shirt with your monster. You'll get the book in the future. Your monster might be an antagonist in an upcoming lit RPG series, the Book of Dungeons. So plenty of stuff going on there. And the higher you rank basically on these, your monster will get more and more stuff after that. So they are here to figure out the monsters, and that's all it is. Wow. I was getting ready. I was getting pumped to do this. And I was like, I'm going to have to do all the things, get back to encounters, get all the way through. But it is just monsters.
Mm-hmm.
Then judging voting starts. Then the top 100 open voting starts. And then final winners announced.
Oh, wow.
So you have until June 12th to create 2 monsters. You can put 2 different entries in. And they'll pick the top 101 to be placed in the book.
So I have this idea.
Yeah.
You take a bear, you mix it with an owl, and you get a bear owl.
You get a bear owl. Like a barowl.
A barowl.
Perfect.
It's an owl with the head of a bear.
Ooh. That's actually terrifying. I like that idea a lot. Like, I keep thinking about like the Jason and the Argonauts, the Clockwork Owl. Was it
Oh,
that
yeah.
one?
Yeah.
Except
Archimedes.
it's a bear at the top.
Or Artemis. Artemis.
Is it Artemis? I can't remember.
I think it's Artemis.
Okay. It's been too long, but I just keep seeing that like clockwork bear head now just spinning around, which that's not what bears are supposed to do.
Oh, that's bad imagery.
On that note, can owl bears spin their heads around?
Ooh, it is an owl head. And owls do have that ability to do weird stuff with their neck.
Right. Huh. That would make it very easy to run a kitchen, right? You'd be focused on your task, and then you could look at everything around you.
Well, I think our revised Owlbear, you can't get advantage from flanking if you use the flanking optional rule in D&D 5e.
Do you use that rule?
No. And actually, I know we keep joking about or mentioning that we're gonna bring up a question from Reddit or Facebook or one of the communities and kind of discuss it. And the one I brought it up accidentally was
you did it.
I did it was there's a question on the Facebook D&D discussion about using the flanking optional rule, and do you use it, and who uses it, and what are your thoughts on it? So I present that to you. Flanking in D&D 5e. What do you think about it?
Big no thanks from me. Big no thanks.
So just so you kind of know what the optional rule is. It's
right.
If you regularly use miniatures, flanking gives combatants a simple way to gain advantage on attack rolls against a common enemy. Mm-hmm. I don't use flanking. If I did, I would probably use it in a way that was more like older editions where you don't get advantage, but maybe you do get that +2 attack that everyone's used to, right?
Right.
And the thing is I think by taking away flanking, you're taking away a tool of the DM to pound upon your player characters to your full maximum ability, right? So
I see.
Because if I throw 30 kobolds at the group, sure, they're going to flank like 1 or 2, but I'm going to flank all of the party, right? And so, that turns, a group of 5 to 10 kobolds into a real threat, which was part of the idea of D&D Next when it was rolling out, was that because of the way the scaling works, it's like a bunch of goblins are always going to be a threat no matter what level you are, which as we know isn't necessarily true, right?
Nor should it be.
No, I agree, but to a point, right?
Yeah.
Like, they need to be at least a nuisance, and at a certain level, they're not even a nuisance anymore. They're just like, okay, well, we're just going to breeze by this because they're going to do like 5 hit points of damage before you obliterate all of them. But
I mean, it's when I think about the Forgotten Realms, if a bunch of goblins, they attack a caravan and then stepping out from one of the wagon doors is Elminster, I think the goblins should just run. I think they should sense the power going on and they should get out. And I think there's a cool moment in D&D when that happens to your character as well. Like the little minions, they get it. They get that you're too strong for them and they get out of town.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the goblins don't recognize Elminster, and then 5 of them all surround him. And sure, a couple of them get a couple jabs in, but they're still only doing like 1d4 of damage. So Elminster, who's epic level, he's like, yeah, ouch, you got me. Now,
Yeah.
boom,
Yeah,
gone.
exactly.
Right?
That's fine.
I want to be able to be effective enough to at least make them do something about it.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Fair enough.
at least in my imagination, no matter how big of a hero you are, there's going to be grunts who have no clue who you are, and they're going to challenge you to a fight in an alley, right?
Oh, okay. Because that is a fun moment for characters as well, is to be ridiculously overpowered. That's true.
Yeah,
that is true.
And I feel like to make it somewhat, they got to get a couple of hits in.
Yeah.
But oh man,
that's true.
There was this this adventure in 4th edition LFR, which I played a lot of, and there was this I want to say it was like a wizard. It has super powerful wizard, big crazy spells, super hard to hit, 1 hit point.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, it was really not. It wasn't the goal of the adventure was not to take out this guy. He was just there, and it was kind of an interesting twist. It's like you could have that character in that edition, in 4th edition, and you could throw 100 goblins at it, and none of them would be able to get there because they just would not be able to hit high enough unless they got that 20 on the dice.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So you have to throw 20 of them at them to get a chance at hitting them at least once. And so yeah, I don't know. I don't like the fact that those characters can exist in some editions, but it's funny. But at the same time, it's like, like it's funny as an author to write an adventure and have something like that.
Oh, for sure. That's strange.
Yeah, right. In a home game, I don't know that I'd want to throw that at my characters or my players. It doesn't feel. It feels more like a joke squeezed in there a meta joke squeezed in there at my player's expense, as opposed to something that we all can kind of get behind.
Yeah, it seems like it's potentially a challenge in the wrong way. Like it's suddenly a combat that's like a puzzle challenge, maybe. Like, can I break through these defenses to get the one hit in? Like, can I get advantage? Okay, and a big bonus, and whatever else it takes. And that can be tactically interesting, but if that's all there is, then
and if you lay out the puzzle ahead of time, right? Like you make it clear that there's more to it than that. But and I think that's kind of the challenge, or some of the interesting ways of writing a home game versus writing for organized play, is that for organized play, there's so much meta information at the table anyway. You can kind of play to that, right?
Yeah.
I don't know, once again, 4th edition, they did some very interesting things in LFR. There was one puzzle where you could solve it one of 2 ways. You could roll a dice, or you could stack all your dice up on the table, right? You could make a skill check, or you could stack your dice, D20, D12, D10, D8, D6, D4, right?
Okay.
Those were your options, right, of how to beat this puzzle. And I think there was more to it than just that, but there was tables of people stacking their dice, and you can do that kind of stuff a lot more easily in writing for something like organized play than you can writing for a home game. So writing for my home game, it's like, am I going to, aside the fact that we're playing on a virtual tabletop right now, am I going to create a puzzle that makes my players do something completely out of character to ensure that their characters succeed?
Right.
It's like, okay, well, you can get advantage on this roll, but you have to do a backflip. Not your character, you have to do the backflip.
Yeah. I think those things can be fun, and I have enjoyed doing them in a few different cases. A friend of mine ran, there was a Pathfinder module called the Dragon. Oh, it's not the Dragon's Descent. Doesn't matter. But you're in this town, right? And a big thing is meeting all the people in town, and you want to impress all the people. So the game has a lot of like, well, go talk to this person and make a diplomacy check. They're your friend now. Cool. You have gained favor with them, and you're helping this faction improve. And the DM for that I had was like, no, that's not how we're going to do it. They all have a game that they want you to play, or they want you to, the baker wants you to bake something. And so this friend in particular was like a chef. And so he brought stuff in and was like, make some dough. We're going to make this dough. And if it works out, if we can eat pizza with it later on today, then you'll gain favor. If it's a bad pizza, you will not gain favor. There was a hunter, and he bought like a plastic toy suction cup archery set and put a target on one side of the room. And it was a ton of fun because it was a mini game anyways. And so he built, it wasn't like directly plot related. So he just made a mini game for every single one of those characters. And I remember it so well. It was so much fun. But it's hard to do that for a combat. Like you said, I can't.
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
And I mean, and honestly, like, I think you've swayed me a little bit, right? Like, I think you're right. The idea of doing goofy meta things, not goofy, but engaging meta things to get people away from just sitting around the table, maybe that is a good thing, because you have such a strong memory of that. And, and now that I'm thinking about it, it's like, when I went to D&D camp, not real D&D camp. So when I was much younger, in early days of the internet, I played a lot of D&D on AOL. And there was this big group that did our own organized play type thing called Isle of Cyrus. And there was like 30 of us who were all playing D&D together. It's like taking turns DMing one shots. It was a lot of fun. But here I am, like 15, 16, getting on a plane to go to middle of nowhere, Ohio, to hang out with a bunch of D&D nerds that I've met on the internet. And yeah, and because it was like 3 days long of just D&D nerdiness, it's like we had those activities, and those other activities that were used to improve our character and help in the adventures that we played later. But they weren't necessarily tied to the adventure. But I remember, the bard competition, the insult competition, the archery competition, the boffer sword fighting competition. All of those things were a lot of fun. And yeah, I think you're right. Like, maybe the afternoon game needs to come back, and we start playing in the afternoons. And and some of the activities, once we're all hanging out again in person, some of the activities will be like you getting off your butt and doing something fun.
Yeah, why not? I did one, and I wasn't sure if it went over as well as I wanted it to, but they were doing some research in a library, and it was like this, they had gotten to this library, there's some things they want to learn here, and I wanted them to feel like they were doing research. And how the heck do you do that? I mean, make an investigation check, make a history check, and you're done. I didn't want to do that. And so I chose 5 books out of my library and put them on the table. And I told them they had to get the first bit of information. There were 3 bits that they needed. The first time they had to put them in order of the main character's last name alphabetically or something like that. And so they're like, well, I know this one. I don't know this one. Okay, so I got to look through. This seems like, and it was just like, you're doing research. Make your best guess. If you don't have the right answer, put it where you think it should go. It was stuff like that. Like, what's the hometown of, or what's a major setting of the book or something like that. So they could smack them together that way. And each time they did that, they gained a little bit of extra information. And there was one, and I remember it was like, who is, like, I think it was like by mother's name or something like that, because they were all books that were pretty clear who that was, except for one, because the main character was a robot.
Oh no.
And so they were like, wait, well, where should this go in the it was like, I don't know. You're doing the research. I just put together a silly puzzle. It didn't really matter. You just had to make an argument for why it should be there, and it would be fine. So I think it was interesting because it was something different, and it was small. It took like 10 minutes tops to do the whole thing. Yeah. And it got people doing something a little bit different. It was definitely not the archery contest style fun, but right. I didn't know how to make research feel like research, and it's just a hard thing to actually do in a game. Like otherwise it's just a skippable moment. Excuse me. And I didn't want it to be skippable because they had worked their way to get into this library to find out these important things. So
yeah, no,
how much do you rush that?
Yeah, well, and it was pointed out in the chat. Jonathan had a DM who made players do a real shot when they were trying to influence a hard-drinking dwarf NPC. Yes, they were in college. And that's an example of why I think for college, like in a group of friends who understand what's going on, that's great. I think that's where the meta activities kind of falls apart. is I think, in that situation, I think you need to be able to hold up a card and say, you know what, I'm going to do the die roll instead, right?
Yep.
I know you brought all this dough to make pizza, but I'm gluten intolerant, so I'm gonna throw up my yellow card. I'm gonna take the die roll, and I'm just gonna hang out while you guys do this part. There needs to be that opportunity.
Absolutely. I agree with that, because it does. I mean, some of those activities are just not for you, and
right.
I know that. I know that very well.
Yeah.
It's an important feeling. Wow.
I like, sure, I could do the shots, and to influence drinking NPCs. Sure, that's fun, but I sure couldn't do the making of the pizza. Right. I have a texture thing. Like I hate getting my hands super dirty. So it's like digging in there and digging in pizza sounds awful to me.
Right. Yeah. I will just roll the die, and that'll be my part of this. And I think that's totally fine.
Absolutely. And I feel like that should be accepted.
Yeah.
It's just a valid activity.
Right. Especially like in, potentially in an organized play environment, you might get everyone saying, we're going to roll the die. Right. Yep. And so those activities start to vanish over time. But in your home game, you're building them around the people that you have there. So that's more like, okay, I have a cool idea. I think you might like it. Okay, not everyone does. That's okay. Cool. Let's do it anyway. Could be interesting. I know that it feels like one of the reasons like puzzles in particular don't show up in a lot of more organized settings is because if one person at the table hates it, everybody, like, it's done.
If there's a puzzle that happens in an organized play adventure, I will always default to rolling. I'm not good at puzzles. And so in those kinds of situations, I usually find that someone at the table is really good at the puzzle and everyone gets behind them, and I think that's great. I'm just not going to be that person who's really good at it. I'm going to roll. In a home game, it's a little bit different because you're with friends, and so you don't have that level of you don't have time crunch. You don't have the person kind of flexing a little bit, because you get a little bit of that, right? They're showing off their skills, like, I got this puzzle nailed, right? You have a little bit more of that interaction. And I think that's when I get engaged in puzzles and they're more fun. I'm not good at them, and they frustrate me most of the time. But in the last home game I was playing in, which was in Schult, there was a lot of puzzles, and there were folks in the group who were very good at puzzles, and they were very kind to those of us, me, who aren't good at puzzles, and we interacted, and it was a lot of fun. But yeah, like puzzles, they frustrate me. I would roll a 20 if it was, roll a d20 and take the failure, right?
Right, which should always be an option. I mean, I think that absolutely, because sometimes you will just get the table that no one, wait, what's going on? What is this code? I don't know what to do with this. Let's roll. Which is totally fine.
Yeah, we've talked about some of the interactivity, like the ability to do it in organized play, ability to do it with friends around the table. But what about virtual tabletop, right? That's kind of the world we're living in at the moment. What are, I think puzzles really lend themselves well to virtual tabletop, but making pizza does not. Or an archery competition does not. Can you think of any engaging ways to engage the players for the benefit of the characters on virtual tabletop? Or even like any of the pitfalls of writing for virtual tabletop versus writing for organized play versus writing for a home game?
I've got to tell you that one time, okay, I'm going to focus on online. I like this idea. I have only LARPed once in my life, and it was wild. It blew me away, because the designer had built this huge, very elaborate system to do everything, like lots of cards, lots of tokens, lots of movements, right? It was basically like a Star Trek style thing. And so if you were a part of engineering, you could cycle through these cards. You could do tasks, like some party game tasks, all sorts of things, to generate shield tokens and send them to the bridge so that they could battle. And there's like 3, DMs working the whole game and having battle combat while the other stuff is going on. One of my favorite parts of it was that they would do these weird mini games. I was in engineering, so that's what I knew the most about. But they would do things like, all right, in order to pass this challenge, you need to get a score of 10,000 on this handheld version of Frogger. Go. And honestly, like if you're playing online, there's so many online games. There's so many online games that even have a theme that is vaguely fantasy, right? So you could do stuff like that, honestly. You could be like, all right, while we're playing, here's a link in the chat right here. As soon as someone gets 10,000 on this game, you'll have succeeded in the challenge. or if you show me each of you get 5,000, then here we go. That would be an interesting way to do activities because there are so many options out there. I mean, there are certainly puzzle options online as well, but we just have this rich resource of games, flash games or whatever, that you could work in a weird way, I think.
Yeah, I used to play a lot of Dungeons and Dragons Online, the DDO MMO, and they did a really good job with puzzles there as well. And a lot of the puzzles were based off like old puzzle games, right? And a lot of the solvers, like the way to solve the puzzle, like the most efficient way to solve the puzzle without like killing the raid that you were in, was to actually have the game and to play through it on your own and then replicate that in the game.
Right.
So that's kind of cool. I dig that.
Did you ever play Puzzle Pirates?
I own Puzzle Pirates, as I own most pirate games on Steam at this point. But when I tried to play it, it froze on me and I never tried again.
I'm so sorry. I logged into it I think I was having a pretty slow day at work one day, and I opened it up like last year maybe. And the first time I had opened it up in close to a decade, I couldn't even tell you, and I was still like one of the top sailors because that puzzle spoke to me. Like the way the ship works is each of the tasks has a unique puzzle for you to do, and the one for sailing is like a Dr. Mario basically. So I love that game, and so I was real good at that one. I was always sailing. But like if you were doing carpentry, it was more of a kind of a Tetris style game, trying to like put boards down to complete your boards. And then great, those boards are finished, those holes are filled, or whatever else. There was a bilge puzzle, there was a steering puzzle, a navigation puzzle, all sorts of stuff. And it was just great because it meant that like your success at sailing from place to place and gaining treasure was based on people's ability to do puzzles. And not just like I wasn't the only sailor, there was a bunch of us doing it, and like our aggregate score would help us along. And that was the best example of collaborative mini games I've ever seen in a game.
I have never really thought of Dr. Mario or Tetris as puzzles.
Sure.
And so you're telling me that, I'm like, oh, I love both Dr. Mario and Tetris, but I don't think of them as puzzles. But maybe I'm looking at it wrong.
Well, let's say so. Right, Dr. Mario, you're trying to eliminate these pills, these capsules, as quickly as possible, and they're different colors on different halves, right? So if I presented it in a puzzle format, right, it might be I'm going to put a red one here and a blue one here and a yellow one here. How quickly can you get rid of those three?
Right.
And that framework, taking it away from I'm playing to get as many points as possible to how efficient can I be, or not even that, but I get more points if I build a chain of capsules that is very precarious. So like when I complete this row of 4, it drops one down here that completes another row of 4, that drops one that completes another row of 4. That is a better way to complete that puzzle, and you would gain more sailing power because of it. Wow. So it wasn't a points-based exercise, although the faster you finish, the more screens you got, and it just kept going. But like points weren't a part of it. It was about being efficient and playing these games in the best puzzle style, I suppose. So I think you're right. I mean, they're not really what we think about as puzzles, but you could reframe them so that they were. I think that's what they did.
Yeah, I'm going to be looking at all the mini games that I'm playing in Final Fantasy VII a little bit differently now.
Right. What was I thinking? Blitzball. That's just one I remember. Blitzball was such a puzzle. Like it absolutely, like when I think about a game like that, it's all about, can I figure out what their strategy is and then beat that strategy? Because it's not a game. the AI is set. They're going to do their thing. They're programmed a specific way, even if their actions are not always, they're not random, but they're not all the same every single time. Like if I reset play a game, it's different. But like
they're driven by an algorithm.
Yes, and if I can figure out what that is, right? I'm playing this game Pyre recently. The same deal because it's a very similar style game. If I know, well, the opposition has a demon and it has a dog and it has a human, they all act within specific parameters. And if the demon is on one side of the map, they're slow, so I know exactly how to get around them. Right? It moves away from the game and into the puzzle, which I like a lot, and it's very clear in that game. They're the same thing. They're just games.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Like when even just like in this conversation, framing them as like looking at Blitzball as figuring out the algorithm. It's like, oh well, that's what I do for a living. It's like, oh, I try to figure out algorithms. Maybe I do like puzzles, and I just have this thing of I hate puzzles in the back of my head from somewhere down the road. Mm-hmm. I'm still going to go with I hate puzzles.
I mean, that's fine.
Just people I'm a grump.
That's okay. I think you're right. People do a lot more puzzles than they realize that they're doing, because there are things that are just puzzling that we have to solve. And, sometimes that is just a matter of finding the most efficient way to do something. And that's it. And you've solved a puzzle.
Yeah.
Even if you don't think about it that way.
All right. Well, my mind is blown. And it's been about an hour.
It has.
It has. So I think unless there was anything else that you wanted to hit up on this week, we'll save the rest of the notes for next week.
Sounds good. It's been a chunky soup day, I think. Good chunky.
It's good chunky soup. Yeah, it's almost a stew. Not quite a stew.
Wow.
Almost a stew. Like I think it has some gravitas.
Absolutely.
Teo says, thank you for the chunks.
Oh, absolutely.
So let's see here. So to wrap things up, you can catch me on Tuesday and Thursday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time doing my DJ thing over at twitch.tv/dreadpiratrabbits. And then, of course, we'll be back here next Sunday at 11 a.m. with more Owlbear Soup. You can follow me on the Twitters and on the Instagrams at 2HitAC0. Yes, that is a second edition reference. And and Rich, how can the folks find and follow you?
Ooh. You can find me most places at rmolina, or you can check out some of my writings at atomicgametheory.com. I'm planning to do some Twitch streaming this week from my personal channels. It's just /Richard Molina, Twitch TV /Richard Molina. There we go. And I'm planning to stream the Uncharted series, like playing some of the earliest Uncharted games, because they are free right now as the kind of part of PlayStation's stay-at-home initiative.
Oh, that's right. That game's full of puzzles. Oh, I love those games. I'm totally changed my view of everything. But all right, well then with that, I guess thanks for joining us, everyone, and we'll see you next week for more Owlbear Soup.
Bye, everybody.